improving the work of the Young Communist League. Speech delivered at the meeting of the workers of the Young Communist League held in Wangqing, March 27, 1933. Comrades, it is already almost 1 year since we founded the Anti-Japanese People's Guerrilla Army and launched an organized armed struggle against Japanese imperialism in line with the policy defined at the Mingyagu meeting. During this period, we have set up guerrilla zones or liberated areas in the vast expanses along the Tumen River. This has provided U.S. guerrillas with a base for lively military and political activities. Relying on the guerrilla bases, we have dealt heavy political and military blows at the Japanese imperialist aggressors, powerfully inspired our people to struggle against them, strengthened our own military and political forces, and steadily developed the whole anti-Japanese national liberation struggle around the armed struggle. Meanwhile, Young Communist League organizations and their members have indeed accomplished a great deal of work. YCL organizations have enrolled many young people by doing organizational and political work among the broad sections of youth and have got them to contribute actively to the anti-Japanese armed struggle. The YCL members and other young people in the guerrilla army have displayed unparalleled bravery, boldness, and self-sacrificing spirit in battle, and those in the guerrilla zones have built up the base and solidly defended it from enemy invasion. Despite the enemy's cruel repression, the YCL members and other youth in the enemy-ruled zone have fought against the Japanese ceaselessly and in various forms, giving strong moral and material support to the guerrilla army. Alarmed by the growing military and political activities of the guerrillas and our people's multifarious anti-Japanese struggle mounted under the former's influence, the Japanese imperialists are now making frantic efforts to destroy the guerrilla army and its base. The situation urgently requires us to heighten the ideological awareness of the broad masses who are opposed to the Japanese and organize them, to thwart the frenzied moves of the Japanese imperialists and advance the armed struggle. In particular, arousing many young people for the anti-Japanese struggle is very important in view of their role in the revolutionary struggle. It is the young people who are the bravest, both in guerrilla actions and in organizational and political work in the area under enemy rule. It is also the young people who will carry the future of our revolution on their shoulders. At present, however, YCL organizations at all levels are not working actively enough to cope with the requirements of our developing revolution. The report and other speeches, too, confirm that there are serious shortcomings in their work. They do not recruit the many young people who are eligible for membership, nor do they properly train the young people of all strata. I should like to comment on some problems related to the steps to be taken after this meeting, so as quickly to rectify the shortcomings in YCL work, expand and strengthen its organizations, and improve information work and education among the broad sections of youth. First, you must expand and consolidate YCL organizations. This is the most important task confronting YCL organizations today. Only by building them up to be broad in scope and strong can the YCL increase its militancy, satisfactorily implement its revolutionary tasks, and successfully strengthen the guerrilla army. At present, however, YCL organizations are not being properly expanded and consolidated. The major defect in their organizational work is leftist closed-doorism. This tendency is expressed in refusing to accept even qualified youths as YCL members by demanding a too high level. True, it should be a principle that the best young people be chosen for YCL membership. But it is a serious mistake to deny membership to those youths who have been trained and tempered in several years of underground activity because they have some defects in their attitude to work, to young workers and peasants because they lack certain knowledge, and to young students because they are too young. You can correct the defects in their attitude without difficulty if you educate them, and in the same way you can raise the level of those who are not good at work due to a lack of knowledge. And it is not right to regard people of almost 20 as too young. General Nam Oth, a warrior in Korean history, said, "If a man at 20 fails to command the national situation, who will call him a man in the years to come?" This is what he said in olden days. So why should people in their late teens nowadays be disqualified as too young, fearing that too many recruits would divulge their secrets? Some YCL organizations do not admit even qualified young people now. This is harmful. We should, of course, strictly guard against leaks and keep secrets even at the cost of our lives. But if you hesitate to expand YCL organizations for the sake of secrecy, you will not be able to build up the revolutionary forces. The point is that you should admit young people to the YCL and then teach them to keep secrets for the sake of the revolution. At the moment, the leftist tendency towards closed-doorism is doing great harm to the growth of YCL organizations. I was told that in some enemy districts, the YCL recruited only 3 or 4 out of 100 young people, who had been active for over a year in the Children's Vanguard and in 3 other organizations, the Peasants Association, the Anti-Imperialist League, and the Revolutionary Mutual Aid Society. This is the result of a leftist mistake. We cannot tolerate this type of error any longer. We should thoroughly eliminate this leftist tendency and actively enlist in the YCL the young people tested in the struggle against Japanese imperialism. YCL organizations should first admit youths who are in the guerrilla army and those who have been tested through actual struggle in the anti-Japanese Self-Defense Corps and other revolutionary organizations in the guerrilla zones. Meanwhile, they should penetrate deep into the enemy-ruled area and recruit awakened progressive youth. At present, the young people living there make up the overwhelming majority, and the YCL organizations have suffered considerably from the enemy's destructive activities. In this situation, YCL organizations at different levels should work efficiently among the youth there and recruit as many of them as possible. They should, above all, strive to win as members young peasants, as well as young workers with a strong revolutionary spirit, a sense of organization and unity. The vast majority of the young people in our country are peasants, most of whom are virtually rural proletarians. It is highly important to admit peasant youths with class awareness and train them to be the main force of the revolution together with the working youths. YCL organizations should never neglect accepting progressive young students. Our students have a very high degree of national consciousness and patriotism because they suffer racial oppression and humiliation by Japanese imperialism. And students in general, regardless of their class origin, are receptive to the trend of the times and zealous in their pursuit of truth. Consequently, they can grasp progressive communist ideology better than anyone else and pioneer the movement for socialist enlightenment. This is illustrated by the Gwangju student movement of November 1929. While striving to eliminate the leftist tendency towards closed-doorism from the organizational work of the YCL on the one hand, we should, on the other, guard strictly against the rightist deviation. The rightist deviation finds expression in the unprincipled, recruitment of even unknown and unqualified young people, allegedly to expand YCL organizations. Some YCL organizations, both in the guerrilla zones and in the enemy-ruled areas, are now planning to enroll politically unprepared youngsters at random, giving them neither class education nor anti-Japanese patriotic education. How can we afford to admit young people whose class consciousness and anti-Japanese patriotic thought are not firm into the YCL organization, the vanguard of the masses of young workers and peasants? If this is allowed to continue, alien and chance elements can infiltrate into the YCL ranks, weaken its militancy, and destroy the organization itself. We must completely reject both the leftist tendency towards closed-doorism and the rightist deviations. Conduct efficient organizational work among the youth wherever they are, and draw in more brave and progressive young people so as to steadily expand and consolidate the YCL. Secondly, all YCL organizations should improve ideological education for broad sections of young people. If we are to strengthen YCL organizations and get many young people to join, we must improve their ideological education. Only when their consciousness is enhanced through extensive and intensive ideological education can the role of the youth be increased in the revolutionary struggle and the historic cause of national liberation be furthered. Terrified by the anti-Japanese armed struggle which is growing day by day, Japanese imperialism is now bent on vicious political stratagems to wreck our revolutionary ranks from within, while strengthening punitive military offensive against the guerrilla army and its base. Unless under these circumstances the ideological education of young people is improved, we shall be unable to smash the enemy's military and ideological offensives and keep advancing the armed struggle. At present, however, YCL organizations are not properly conducting ideological education among broad sections of young people. The major defect in their ideological education is that it lacks clear content and objectives and is not suited to young people. This sort of ideological education might be even less effective than a Christian preacher's sermon. YCL organizations are now bragging of propagating Marxism-Leninism, but their speeches are often too empty and ill-adapted to the audience to attract them. Young people have their own characteristics. They are enterprising, revolutionary, heroic, ardent in their search for the truth and in their aspirations for an ideal society, and more sensitive than anyone else. However, YCL organizations are working in a stereotyped manner instead of adapting their information and agitation work and individual education to the specific features and aspirations of the youth and to different local conditions and customs. The YCL's main effort in ideological education at the present moment should concentrate on imbuing broad sections of the youth with hatred for the Japanese and love of the country, and on increasing their class consciousness, so that they will actively join in the sacred war against the Japanese and for the liberation and independence of their country and take the lead in the struggle. YCL organizations should constantly expose to broad sections of the youth the insidious colonial policy of Japanese imperialism, its craftiness and its brutal slaughter of our people, so as to instill in them strong anti-Japanese sentiments. Besides, YCL organizations should work harder to convince many young people of the exploitative nature and treachery of the pro-Japanese landlords, capitalists, and other stooges of the Japanese imperialists. Stepping up education and patriotism is important at the present moment. This is the way to imbue our young people with a sense of national pride and self-respect, and with burning hatred for the Japanese imperialists who are occupying our beautiful country, that silk embroidery of a land of 3,000 rai, and encourage them to be zealous in the anti-Japanese struggle. We must always teach them to nurture an infinite love for their country and acquire good knowledge of the history of our people's struggle and of our brilliant national culture, so that they will value these and heighten their desire for national independence. In order to encourage broad sections of young people to rise up in the sacred war against the Japanese, we must intensify education in revolutionary optimism. YCL organizations should be tireless in exposing the weaknesses of Japanese imperialism and the inexorability of its downfall, and in explaining the righteousness of our revolutionary cause and the inevitability of its victory to the young people, so as to inspire them to fight unyieldingly against Japanese imperialism and overcome all difficulties and obstacles in their way. Further, ideological education to enhance militant solidarity with the Chinese youth should be stepped up among broad sections of our young people. This is essential in the struggle to thwart the Japanese imperialist plot to create bad blood between nations and to reinforce the anti-Japanese revolutionary forces. Through improved ideological education among the young people, YCL organizations should form a united front with the Chinese youth in opposition to Japanese imperialism, the common enemy of the Korean and Chinese peoples, and vigorously push forward the work with the Chinese, nationalist anti-Japanese units in particular. YCL organizations must conduct ideological education effectively in close combination with the young people's activities to carry out their revolutionary tasks. Only then will ideological education cease to be lip service and actually contribute to the revolutionary cause. For the immediate period ahead, YCL organizations should combine ideological education with the effort to implement the policy of anti-Japanese armed struggle. In this way, they will imbue the young people with firm confidence in the victory of the revolution, inspire them staunchly to defend the guerrilla zones wholeheartedly, to support the AJPGA, and actively to participate in various actions against the Japanese. Ideological education of young people must adopt diverse ways to suit their characteristics. If this work is done in a humdrum way, in disregard of their special features and character, the desired results will not be attained. YCL organizations should organize lectures, roundtable talks, motivational speeches, political seminars, and other forms of oral information, as well as different literary, art, and sports activities in keeping with the mental qualities and other characteristics of the youth. Ideological education can be successful only when it is adapted to the levels of those to be educated. This requires, above all, a full understanding of the people concerned. A doctor examines the physical qualities and characteristics of his patient before giving him treatment. This is because different characteristics and different physical qualities give rise to different symptoms even with the same disease, and this in turn necessitates the prescription of different kinds and different doses of medicine. Likewise, YCL organizations must be clear about the class positions and ideological awareness of the young people and suit the education to them. In addition, ideological education must be given in a language understandable to everyone. If you use borrowed words or difficult expressions in your speech, regardless of how they are understood by the young audience, you may produce an adverse effect far from the desired results. Suppose you gather together for information purposes peasant youths with a low level of consciousness and address them in an affected manner, putting forward incomprehensible propositions, for instance. You say we must destroy bourgeois society and win proletarian hegemony, we must establish a Soviet, or speak about proletarian internationalism. Then the audience will say, that young man is crazy, not knowing even the Korean language and using only foreign terms. He is clamoring for the Korean Revolution. We've listened to him all day and yet heard not a word about Korea's independence. Such information will not only be sterile but may disappoint the young people. So YCL organizations should educate the young people not in a presumptuous manner, but in plain words understandable to them. Remolding the ideology of young people and organizing them for revolutionary struggle cannot be completed by conducting a couple of educational projects. The objective can only be attained through tireless and persevering inculcation. If explaining once is not enough, do it twice. And if twice is not enough, do it 10 times and even 100 times. In this way, YCL organizations will persuade the young people patiently until all of them participate zealously in the sacred struggle to wipe out Japanese imperialism. Thirdly, YCL organizations should take on responsibility for guiding the work of the Communist Children's Corps. This provides an important guarantee for strengthening the YCL and, further, for reinforcing the anti-Japanese People's Guerrilla Army. The members of the CC represent our future. Unless the CC is strengthened, there can be no strong organization of young communists, and without politically qualified, staunch members of the YCL, it will be impossible to found a revolutionary working-class party on a sound basis. Improving the work of the CC now will result in reinforcing the YCL and laying the groundwork for the party. That is why the YCL and the party are called the Alliance of Three, and even a song about has been YCL organizations should foster in the minds of children an ardent love of their country and hatred for the enemy. They should clearly teach the children about our beautiful land, rich mineral resources, proud history of our people's struggle, and our brilliant national culture. At the same time, they should bring home to them that Japanese imperialism, the landlords and capitalists, are our enemies. This is the way to educate children from childhood to love their country and people and hate the enemy. YCL organizations should urge the children to be devoted to the life of their organization. In this way, the children will hold the organization dear from their early years, rely on it in their daily lives, and carry out its assignments responsibly. The instructors of the CC play a very important part. They are teachers and guides who are directly in charge of ordering and guiding the children's studying and life. YCL organizations at all levels must enhance the role of the instructors and, at the same time, select fine YCL members and assign them as CC instructors, so as to guarantee responsible guidance to the work of the CC. YCL organizations should give efficient guidance to the members of the Children's Vanguard. YCL organizations should first impart some military knowledge to CV members, assign them military duties such as guard duty, reconnaissance, liaison, spy hunting, and other missions, as well as tasks for political study, and help them to carry out their assignments correctly like the CV members they are, with a keen sense of national pride and class consciousness. In this way, they will be led to contribute actively to the anti-Japanese struggle and constantly undergo revolutionary training. Fourthly, YCL workers should radically improve the way they work and their attitude to work. We have already emphasized on many occasions the need for YCL workers to have a correct viewpoint on the masses and become true leaders of the young people.
But many of them still throw their weight about, using words of foreign origin and hurling abuse at the young people. They cannot educate and unite young people this way. True, they will come across many
True, they will come across many complicated and difficult problems in their work, since they have to deal with different sections of the youth. But they will be successful, despite the difficulties and complexities, if they approach the young people with the heart of a real brother and with true revolutionary comradeship, firmly trust them, and rely on their strength and wisdom in work. So it is the primary task for YCL workers to acquire the revolutionary viewpoint on the masses. YCL workers should also acquire the revolutionary style of work, that is, depending on the strength of the broad masses. They should go deep among broad sections of the young people, explain their tasks and teach them how to carry them out, while sharing board and lodging with them, so that the young people should understand their tasks and apply themselves fully to the tasks. Persuasion and education is a style of work inherent in communists. A revolution will triumph only through the struggle of awakened and conscious people. You can never awaken young people to consciousness by coercion or command, especially now, when we are fighting against the enemy on all sides to liberate the country. The only way for us to extensively mobilize the young people in the anti-Japanese struggle is by persuasion and education. This does not mean, however, that YCL workers should never criticize comrades who made mistakes. YCL workers must combine persuasion and education with principled criticism. Nevertheless, we must bear in mind that criticism can be effective only when it is given in a truly comradely manner and to suit the character and awareness of those criticized. If you ignore these factors and rebuke comrades, saying this is serious or that is wrong, allegedly to sharpen the edge of criticism, it will produce an adverse effect. If you are to give criticism correctly, you must first have a correct understanding of the shortcomings of the comrade concerned, clearly point out his faults one by one, explain to him where he is wrong, and show him specific ways and means to rectify them.
This is precisely the way to give comradely and principled criticism in the true sense of the word. Criticism lacking comradeship will not really move people to deep repentance. YCL workers should always give young people advice and help so that they can fulfill their tasks without making mistakes. They should make it a rule to go among the young people to teach and help them. YCL workers must have a correct attitude to work. The communist attitude is to love and respect the masses at all times, to work devotedly in their interests and share life and death, joys and sorrows with them. This is precisely the communist attitude YCL workers must acquire. They should always be modest and simple, learn humbly from the masses, and live frugally. Only then will they be able to go deep among broad strata of the young people and unite with them, sharing joys and sorrows with them. They should lead the young people whenever they are confronted with hard tasks, braving the difficulties and guiding their fellows by providing practical examples. Comrades, extremely difficult and grim is the armed struggle against the Japanese imperialists, who are desperately trying to stamp out the anti-Japanese spirit of our people and put down the armed struggle. But the Korean people will without fail defeat Japanese imperialism, achieve the country's liberation and independence, and build a new society in their beautiful land of 3,000 rai, where everyone will live equally in happiness. Looking forward with confidence to the day of victory, the Korean people are advancing under the unfurled banner of anti-Japanese armed struggle. If this struggle is to grow and triumph, the broad masses of young people must take an active part in the struggle and play a leading role. Now, I firmly believe that YCL organizations at all levels will improve their work as required by the development of the revolution. Knit the broad masses of young people closely around themselves. and train them to be young communist vanguards who can devote all their bloom of youth and lives to the struggle for the Korean Revolution.